If you've ever been dismissed by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You're not going to want to miss what happened next. My name is Elena Martinez, and for 29 years I was invisible. The older sister who couldn't hack it in tech, while my younger sister Sophia became Silicon Valley's darling. The failure who worked at some boring foundation, while Sophia raised millions for her AI startup. The disappointment who lived quietly while Sophia's face appeared on magazine covers. What nobody in my family knew was that for the past 7 years, I'd been the chief investment officer of Apex Frontier Capital, an $80 billion venture fund that had backed 23 unicorns and controlled more startup capital than any private fund in North America. My signature approved or killed deals worth hundreds of millions. My investment thesis shaped entire technology sectors. And I'd kept it secret from every single person in my family. The decision to hide my success wasn't impulsive, it was strategic. When I was 22 and just graduated from Stanford with degrees in computer science and economics, I watched my family's reaction to my first job offer. I'd been recruited by a small venture capital firm that nobody had heard of, turning down positions at Google, Microsoft, and 3 hot startups. "You're going to be someone's secretary?" my mother had asked, her voice thick with disappointment. "With a Stanford degree?" My father shook his head. "Sophia's already planning her first startup and she's still in college. She has the entrepreneurial gene. You should have gone into product management like we discussed." Sophia, then 19 and bursting with confidence, patted my shoulder. "Not everyone can handle the pressure of building something, Elena. There's no shame in playing it safe." That moment crystallized everything. My family didn't see me, they saw their own assumptions. And I decided right then, I would build an empire in silence. I would test whether they could ever value me without knowing what I'd achieved. Whether love could exist without impressive credentials attached to my name. The answer revealed itself over 7 years of family dinners, holidays, and gatherings. I rose through venture capital like a comet. At 24, I was an associate who spotted patterns nobody else saw. At 26, I was a principal who led 3 investments that returned 40x. At 27, I was a partner. At 29, I became chief investment officer of Apex Frontier Capital after we spun out from our parent fund with $80 billion in committed capital. My personal net worth exceeded $90 million. My annual compensation package was $4.7 million plus carried interest that often doubled that. I owned a penthouse in the city's most exclusive building, purchased through an LLC so my family wouldn't know. I drove a 4-year-old Toyota because it was practical and because it maintained the fiction. The fiction that I worked at Apex Frontier Foundation, our nonprofit arm that funded tech education programs. I let my family believe I was a program officer, maybe senior if they were feeling generous. They never asked for details. They weren't interested in the boring foundation work. I did. Meanwhile, Sophia's career exploded exactly how everyone predicted. She founded Neural Vision at 21, an AI startup focused on computer vision for autonomous vehicles. She raised $800,000 in pre-seed funding, then $3 million in seed, then $15 million in Series A. By 25, she'd raised $43 million total across 3 rounds and was regularly featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, Wired. Every family gathering became a celebration of Sophia. Her latest partnership with automotive manufacturers. Her growing team, 70 employees. Her TED Talk that got 2 million views. Her appearance on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. Sophia's speaking at the AI Summit next month. Mom would announce to relatives, friends, anyone who'd listen. The keynote speaker. Can you imagine? Only 26 years old. Dad would beam with pride. "That's my daughter. I always knew she'd change the world." Then they'd remember I existed. "And Elena, you're still at the foundation? That's nice. Helping students, right?" "Right," I'd say with a smile. "We gave out some scholarships last quarter." "How sweet," Mom would reply, already turning back to Sophia. "So Sophia, tell everyone about the Fortune 500 company that wants to partner with Neural Vision." I'd watch my sister glow under the attention, soaking up every ounce of validation. And I'd take mental notes. What my family didn't see, what they couldn't see because they never looked, was what I saw in my role. Sophia's company was in trouble. Serious trouble. Neural Vision had impressive technology demonstrations but struggled with real-world deployment. Their computer vision models worked beautifully in controlled environments and failed catastrophically in unpredictable conditions. They'd promised automotive partners production-ready systems and delivered prototypes that couldn't handle rain, fog, or unusual lighting. Their burn rate was astronomical, $3.8 million monthly with runway for exactly 4 months. They needed a Series B immediately, $50 to $70 million to survive, pivot their technology approach and rebuild credibility with increasingly skeptical partners. The problem? The Series B market for autonomous vehicle AI had collapsed 6 months ago after 3 major competitors failed spectacularly and publicly. Investors were spooked. The deals that used to happen in weeks now took months of brutal due diligence if they happened at all. Sophia needed a miracle. And there were exactly 4 funds in North America that regularly wrote $50 million checks for AI infrastructure companies. Apex Frontier Capital was the biggest. 3 months ago I saw the application come through our system. Neural Vision Incorporated Series B, $65 million at $280 million pre-money valuation. Founder, Sophia Martinez. My chest tightened. I'd known this moment would come eventually. Sophia was running out of options and we were the obvious choice. If she could get past our notoriously rigorous investment committee. I assigned the preliminary analysis to my senior partner, James, without mentioning the family connection. I wanted an objective assessment first. His report came back with multiple red flags. Revenue projection misses by 40% versus original forecasts. Technology deployment delays averaging 8 months. Customer acquisition costs 3x higher than projected. 2 major partnerships at risk of termination. Recommend detailed technical audit before proceeding. I spent 20 hours personally reviewing every document. Financial statements, technical specifications, partnership agreements, customer feedback, competitive analysis, team composition. The picture was worse than James's summary suggested. Neural Vision wasn't just struggling, it was failing. The core technology had fundamental limitations nobody wanted to acknowledge. The team was brilliant but inexperienced in manufacturing constraints. The business model assumed partnerships that were dissolving. The valuation was based on projections that were fantasy. At the requested $280 million pre-money valuation, this was a terrible investment. At $120 million? Maybe salvageable with massive strategic changes. At the current trajectory? The company had 12 months before complete collapse. But I didn't reject the application. I scheduled the pitch for our Thursday investment committee meeting. I wanted to see this play out. The week before the meeting, Sophia was insufferable at family dinner. She'd brought her CTO, a sharp guy named Derek who spent the meal name-dropping partnerships with automotive giants. Thursday's the big day, Sophia announced, practically vibrating with excitement. We're pitching to Apex Frontier Capital. They're the most selective fund in venture capital. If we land this, we're talking guaranteed unicorn status within 18 months. Mom grabbed her hand. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud. You've worked so hard for this. Sophia glanced at me with barely concealed pity. Elena, you probably don't follow venture capital stuff, but Apex Frontier is legendary. This is like pitching to the gods of tech investing. Elite business circles. I'm sure you'll do great, I said mildly, cutting my chicken. Derek leaned forward, confidence oozing. Most funds would kill to invest in Neural Vision. Our tech is years ahead of competitors. Thursday's really about choosing the right partner who understands our vision. Dad raised his wine glass. To Sophia. The daughter who's actually changing the world. I took a sip of water and said nothing. But I was already thinking about the technical audit we'd commissioned from 3 independent AI researchers. Their confidential report sat in my office safe. Neural Vision's architecture shows fundamental limitations in edge case handling. Current approach unlikely to achieve production-grade reliability without ground-up redesign. Nobody at this table knew I'd read that report a dozen times. Nobody knew I'd personally reviewed code repositories, talked to former employees, interviewed frustrated partners. Nobody knew that in 6 days, I'd be the person deciding whether Sophia's company lived or died. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed in my standard boardroom uniform. Black Armani pantsuit, Bulgari watch, diamond studs that cost more than my family's annual property taxes. Professional authority without ostentation. Apex Frontier's offices occupied the entire 63rd floor of the city's tallest building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist design, walls displaying framed term sheets from our most legendary investments. Companies that had started in garages and were now worth billions. Our main conference room could seat 30 but felt intimate through careful design. 25-foot mahogany table, leather chairs that cost $4,000 each, integrated presentation technology, and lighting designed to make everyone look their best while revealing every nervous tick. At 1:45 p.m., I took my seat at the head of the table. My nameplate sat front and center. Elena Martinez, Chief Investment Officer. My 5 partners arranged themselves along both sides. James, my second-in-command who'd been in venture capital for 23 years. Linda, who specialized in AI and machine learning investments. Robert, who handled portfolio operations and could spot operational problems from a mile away. Kenji, our technical expert with a PhD in computer vision. And Sarah, who managed relationships with limited partners and understood market dynamics better than anyone I'd met. At 1:58 p.m., my assistant Michael showed Sophia and Derek into the conference room. I watched Sophia's entrance. She wore a sharp designer suit, carried herself with practiced confidence, and radiated the kind of self-assurance that comes from being told you're exceptional since childhood. Derek followed, equally polished, equally confident. Neither of them looked at me directly. I was backlit by the enormous windows, positioned at the far end of the table. Just another investor in a room full of investors. Sophia set up her laptop, smiling at the partners. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Sophia Martinez, founder and CEO of Neural Vision, and this is Derek Chen, our CTO. We're absolutely thrilled too. Before we begin, James interrupted smoothly, let me introduce today's investment committee. I'm James Morrison, Senior Managing Partner. To my left, Linda Chin, Partner specializing in AI and machine learning. Robert Nakamura, Partner for Portfolio Operations. Kenji Tanaka, our technical expert in computer vision and autonomous systems. Sarah Williams, Partner managing LP relationships. He turned toward me and I saw the exact moment Sophia's eyes focused on my face. And at the head of the table, James continued, our Chief Investment Officer who has final approval authority on all investments over $25 million, Elena Martinez. The laptop remote slipped from Sophia's fingers. It hit the table with a sharp crack, then clattered to the hardwood floor. Elena. Her voice came out as a whisper. What are you? I thought you worked at the foundation. I do, I replied calmly, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd made billion-dollar decisions weekly for years. I chair the Apex Frontier Foundation. But my primary role for the past 7 years has been Chief Investment Officer of Apex Frontier Capital. I gestured to the room. This is my fund. Derek had gone completely white. You're Elena Martinez? The Elena Martinez. Sophia looked at him confused. What are you talking about? She's a legend, Derek said, his voice barely audible. She spotted the quantum computing wave 2 years before anyone else. She backed Neural Path, DataStream, 7 other unicorns. Her investment record is perfect. Literally perfect. Not a single loss in 7 years. I didn't realize. The last names. I never connected. Sophia turned back to me, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, disbelief, and something that looked like betrayal. You never said anything. All these years you let us think. I let you think exactly what you wanted to think, I said evenly. You assumed I worked at a foundation in some junior capacity. I never corrected you because I wanted to see something. Would my family ever value me without knowing my accomplishments? Would anyone ever ask about my work, my expertise, my life? Mom's voice echoed in my memory. You couldn't hack it in tech. Sophia's voice. Not everyone can handle the pressure of building something. Dad's toast. The daughter who's actually changing the world. The answer, I continued, was clear. Now you're here requesting $65 million at a $280 million pre-money valuation. I've reviewed your materials extensively. Let's discuss whether Apex Frontier Capital is the right partner for Neural Vision. Sophia stood frozen, her carefully prepared confidence shattered. Derek touched her elbow. Sophia. The presentation. We have to. Right. She shook herself visibly, trying to recover. Yes. Let's begin. The pitch was a disaster from the first slide. Sophia, who'd delivered this presentation flawlessly to our parents a dozen times, who'd charmed journalists and conference audiences, stumbled over words she'd rehearsed for weeks. Every bold claim sounded hollow when delivered to her secret venture capitalist sister. Every impressive metric felt desperate when stated to someone who could verify every number. Derek tried to support her, jumping in with technical details, but he kept glancing at me nervously, which only made everything worse. 10 minutes in, Linda raised her hand. Let me stop you there, Sophia. You're showing 40% month-over-month growth in deployments. But I'm looking at your partnership agreements. 3 of your 5 major partners have put deployments on hold pending technical improvements. Can you explain that discrepancy? Sophia's voice wavered. Those are temporary pauses while we refine. They're not temporary, Linda said, her tone professional but sharp. Autodrive Systems sent you a formal letter stating they're evaluating alternative solutions. Tech Motors reduced their pilot program by 80%. Global Transport terminated their contract entirely last month. That's not refinement. That's customer loss. I watched the color drain from Sophia's face. Robert spoke up. Your burn rate is $3.8 million monthly, but your current runway shows 4 months of cash. That means this isn't a growth round. It's a survival round. Why should we believe the problem is insufficient capital rather than fundamental business model issues? Our technology is sound, Derek interjected. We just need more time to optimize for real-world conditions. Is it sound? Kenji's voice was quiet but devastating. I reviewed your technical specifications. Your models show 98% accuracy in controlled environments and 76% accuracy in real-world deployment. Automotive applications require 99.9% reliability. That's not an optimization problem, that's an architecture problem. Sophia looked like she might cry. We're working on version 2 of our core model, which won't be ready for 18 months according to your internal roadmap, Kenji continued, and requires $40 million in additional R&D spending beyond this raise. You're asking for $65 million knowing it won't solve your technical challenges. The room fell into heavy silence. James glanced at me, then back to Sophia. Ms. Martinez, let me be direct. Your company has impressive technology demonstrations but failed real-world deployments. You've burned through $43 million in 3 years and have 4 months of runway. Your core technology has fundamental limitations that can't be fixed with incremental improvements. The partnerships you're counting on are dissolving. And you're requesting a valuation that assumes problems are already solved when in reality, you're 18 months from having a production-ready product. Sophia's hands were shaking. That's not. You don't understand the full picture. We understand perfectly, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the presentation began. You built impressive demo technology and convinced yourself it was production-ready. You made promises to partners based on what you hoped to achieve, not what you could deliver. You've been so focused on maintaining the narrative of success that you stopped acknowledging reality. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family, because what happened next changed everything. But here's what I see that you don't, I continued, pulling out a different folder. I've spent 40 hours analyzing Neural Vision. Not as your sister, as an investor who's backed 23 companies from early stage to unicorn status. I slid documents across the table. Technical analyses, market reports, competitive assessments, all marked with my notes. Your core computer vision technology is genuinely innovative. The problem isn't the base algorithms, it's the deployment architecture. You tried to build one system that works everywhere, which is impossible with current technology. But if you focused on specific use cases, warehouse automation, agricultural monitoring, controlled logistics environments, your existing tech could be production-ready in 6 months. Sophia looked up, confusion mixing with hope. Your team is talented but inexperienced in manufacturing constraints, I continued. You need an experienced VP of engineering who's shipped physical products, not just software. You need to cut your burn rate by 40% immediately. That means layoffs of people working on the autonomous vehicle pivot that won't succeed. You need to reset expectations with remaining partners or cut them loose entirely. I opened another document. I had 3 independent AI researchers audit your technology. Their conclusion: current approach won't achieve automotive-grade reliability without fundamental redesign requiring 18 to 24 months and $60 to $80 million. But your underlying computer vision models could dominate warehouse automation within 12 months with proper focus. Derek was leaning forward now, studying the technical assessments. So here's the reality, I said, my voice gentle but absolutely firm. At $280 million pre-money for automotive AI? This is an impossible investment. At $95 million pre-money for warehouse automation pivot? This becomes interesting. But that requires acknowledging that the company you thought you built isn't the company you actually built. Sophia's voice broke. But automotive was the vision. That was the whole point. Changing the world, saving lives. Visions don't pay bills, Robert said quietly. And dead companies don't change the world. You can pivot to warehouse automation, dominate that market, build cash flow and credibility, and return to automotive in 3 years from a position of strength. Or you can insist on automotive now and run out of money in 4 months. Sarah added, for context, we review about 300 pitches per quarter. We invest in roughly 2. Your company is interesting enough for this conversation, but only if you're willing to make dramatic changes. Without Elena's advocacy based on the underlying technology potential, this would have been a pass before you finished your first slide. Sophia looked at me with tears streaming down her face, mascara creating dark tracks. Why didn't you tell me? If I'd known you were in venture capital, if I'd known you understood this stuff, I could have asked for help months ago before everything got this bad. Would you have? I asked softly. Would you have taken advice from me? The sister who couldn't hack it in tech? The failure who played it safe with a foundation job. The disappointment who wasn't changing the world. Sophia flinched like I'd slapped her. For 7 years, Sophia, you never once asked about my work. Not once. You just assumed it wasn't important because it wasn't splashy. Because I wasn't on magazine covers. My voice stayed level but emotion was leaking through. I wanted to see if anyone in our family could value me without impressive credentials. The answer was no. That's not fair, she whispered. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a note file. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. You talked about neural vision for an hour. Dad asked me one question about my work. Before I could answer, you interrupted to show everyone your TechCrunch article. Last Christmas, Mom toasted the daughter who's actually changing the world, while looking at you. Your birthday dinner 6 months ago. You literally said, Elena wouldn't understand. This is elite business circles. 3 weeks ago at Sunday brunch, you said I probably didn't follow venture capital because it wasn't my world. Each example landed with visible impact. Sophia's face crumpled. I'm not saying this to be cruel, I said softer now. I'm saying it because you need to understand. Success isn't just about building technology. It's about building character. About treating people with respect regardless of what you think they can do for you. About acknowledging reality instead of performing success. Derek was staring at the table, his previous confidence completely shattered. But here's what I'm offering, I continued. Not as your sister. As an investor who believes your underlying technology is worth saving. Apex Frontier Capital will invest $32 million at a $95 million pre-money valuation. But this comes with non-negotiable conditions. I slid a term sheet across the mahogany surface. First, you pivot entirely to warehouse automation within 60 days. That means laying off everyone working on automotive applications, about 30 people. It means terminating automotive partnerships formally rather than letting them die slowly. It means rebuilding your go-to-market around logistics companies. Second, you hire an experienced VP of engineering within 90 days. Someone who's shipped physical robotics products, not just software. We'll provide 3 candidates from our network. You will listen to their expertise even when it contradicts your instincts. Third, you accept our nomination of 2 board seats. 1 technical expert who will push you on product decisions. 1 operational expert who will rebuild your business model. They will have veto power over strategic decisions until you hit $10 million AR. Fourth, you work with an executive coach weekly for 12 months. You need to develop as a leader before you can scale as a CEO. The coach will be Dr. Marcus Webb. He's worked with 47 founders in similar situations. Sophia picked up the term sheet with trembling hands, staring at the numbers. That's less than half what we requested, she said, voice barely audible. It's exactly what you need to execute the pivot I outlined, I replied. More money would just extend your runway while fundamental problems got worse. This is enough to rebuild properly or fail honestly. James spoke up. For context, Ms. Martinez, your company was a borderline rejection. The only reason this term sheet exists is because Elena saw potential in the base technology despite catastrophic strategic execution. Without her advocacy, we would have passed in the first 15 minutes. Sophia looked up at me, tears flowing freely. Why would you help me? After everything I said, everything our family said about you. Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because Abuela Rosa always said that family means showing people who they can become, not just punishing them for who they've been. Our grandmother, who'd passed away when I was 25, had told me that when I was struggling in my first venture capital role. She'd been the only family member who ever really saw me. But understand this clearly, I continued, my voice hardening. This is a business investment, not a family favor. If you take our money and don't execute on this pivot, if you chase the automotive dream instead of focusing on warehouse automation, if you ignore our board members' guidance, if you prioritize looking successful over being successful, I will remove you as CEO. I will protect our investment and your employees' jobs, even if that means protecting them from you. The room went absolutely silent. Sophia wiped her eyes, smearing mascara further. That's fair. You have 72 hours to decide, I said. Talk to Derek. Talk to your existing board. Run the numbers honestly. Think about whether you're ready to admit that the company you imagined isn't the company you need to build. And Sophia. She met my eyes. Your technology is worth saving. The question is whether your ego will let you save it. The meeting ended. Derek practically carried Sophia out, her entire body language radiating shock and devastation. After they left, Linda turned to me. That was brutal. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said honestly. That conversation needed to happen. One way or another. Do you think she'll take the deal? Robert asked. 60-40 in favor, I said. She's smart enough to know it's her best option. But pride is a powerful drug. Kenji nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Elena, that was masterful. You were honest without being cruel, firm without being vindictive. That's why you're the best at what you do. I gathered my materials and returned to my office. The city sprawled 63 floors below, millions of people fighting to build something meaningful. My phone rang 40 minutes later. Mom's number. I almost sent it to voicemail. But I answered. Elena. Mom's voice was tight, furious. Sophia just told us what happened. How could you? Humiliating your sister in front of her team? Making her feel like a failure? She's devastated. I gave her honest feedback on her company, Mom. That's my job. You could have told us. All these years, letting us think you were just working at some foundation. I let you think what you showed me you believed, I said calmly. That my work wasn't worth asking about. That my achievements didn't matter. That Sophia was the only daughter worth celebrating. That's not true. It is true, Mom. And you know it. How many times did you ask about my career? Really ask and listen to the answer instead of waiting to talk about Sophia again. Silence. I'm offering Sophia the best deal she's going to get, I continued. I'm using my professional reputation to back her company despite serious problems. I'm giving her access to expertise that most founders never get. I'm doing it because she's my sister and I believe she can become the leader her company needs. But I won't enable her delusions and I won't pretend her company is succeeding when it's failing. You're being vindictive, Mom said, but her voice had lost its conviction. No, Mom. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Sophia has 72 hours to decide if she wants to save her company or save her ego. That's her choice. I heard Dad's voice in the background, angry and muffled. Dad wants to talk to you, Mom said. I know what Dad wants to say. That I should support family unconditionally. That Sophia deserves better from her sister. That I'm being cruel. Well, tell Dad this. I've spent 29 years watching him celebrate Sophia's every achievement while treating mine as invisible. I've watched him invest in her companies while never asking about my career. I've sat through countless toasts to the daughter who's actually changing the world, while being treated as the daughter who settled for safe. My voice stayed level but emotion was breaking through. So no, I don't particularly care what Dad thinks about how I run my fund or evaluate investments. He lost the right to my professional respect about 7 years ago. Elena, that's... I have another call, Mom. If Sophia wants to discuss the term sheet, she has my office number. My actual office number, which none of you ever bothered asking for. I hung up and stared out the window at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. The next 72 hours were radio silence. I buried myself in work. Portfolio company board meetings, 3 new pitch evaluations, strategy sessions with my partners on market trends. I didn't check my phone obsessively. I didn't refresh my email every 5 minutes. I'd made my offer. Sophia would either accept reality or she wouldn't. Monday afternoon, Michael buzzed my office. Elena? Sophia Martinez is here. She says she needs to speak with you. Send her in. Sophia walked into my office looking like she hadn't slept in days. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, jeans and a Stanford hoodie instead of her usual polished presentation. She looked more like the little sister I remembered from childhood than the CEO who'd graced magazine covers. She stood in front of my desk and for a long moment neither of us spoke. I'm taking the deal, she finally said. All of it. The lower valuation, the pivot, the board seats, the executive coach. Everything. Hey, I said. Sit down. Let's talk through timeline and execution. She collapsed into the chair looking exhausted. Derek and I spent 3 days doing brutal analysis. You're right about everything. The automotive approach, the technical limitations, the partnership failures. We've been lying to ourselves for 18 months about how bad things really were. That's common, I said. Founders often can't see their companies objectively. That's why outside perspective matters. It's more than that. Her voice cracked. I was so invested in being the success story, in proving I was the golden child everyone believed in, that I stopped actually building a good company. I made every decision based on what would impress people, not what would work. She wiped her eyes. And I treated you like you were nothing. For years. Because having a sister I could look down on made me feel more successful. I didn't say anything. Just listened. Abuela Rosa used to tell me I had a gift for seeing the future, Sophia continued. She said I could build something meaningful if I learned humility first. I never understood. I thought confidence and humility were opposites. They're not, I said quietly. Confidence is believing in your abilities. Humility is acknowledging your limitations. You need both to build something lasting. Sophia nodded, tears flowing. I don't deserve your help. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know, I'm going to do the work. The pivot, the coaching, listening to the board members. Not to prove something to you or Mom or Dad. To prove something to myself. That's the right reason, I said. I pulled out an implementation folder I'd prepared over the weekend, because despite everything I'd known she'd take the deal. Here's what happens next. Term sheet signatures happen this week. Money transfers within 10 days. Marcus Webb starts coaching next Monday. Board members get appointed within 30 days. I'm recommending Dr. Sarah Patel for technical guidance and James Morrison for operational oversight. Your VP of Engineering candidates. I've identified 3 people who've built warehouse automation systems at scale. You'll interview all 3, but I strongly recommend Dr. Michael Okonkwo. He scaled a similar company from $5 million to $200 million AR. Sophia took the folder, studying the names and credentials. These are incredible resources. I don't understand why you're doing this. Because your technology is genuinely innovative, I said. Because 30 employees depend on you making good decisions. Because the warehouse automation market needs better solutions. And yes, because you're my sister and I believe you can become the leader your company needs. But understand, I continued, leaning forward, what happens with this investment is separate from what happens with our relationship. If you want to rebuild things between us as sisters, that's different work. It doesn't depend on whether Neural Vision succeeds or fails. It depends on whether you're willing to see me as a complete person, not just a reflection of your success. Sophia met my eyes. I want that. The relationship. Not because you're funding my company, because I miss having a sister. I miss the person who used to help me with homework and believed in my dreams before I became so obsessed with being impressive. I'm still that person, I said. I just stopped waiting for my family to notice. She nodded. Can we have coffee? Not to talk about business. Just to talk. Like sisters who actually know each other. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. The term sheet was signed 4 days later. The $32 million hit Neural Vision's account the following week. Sophia hired Dr. Webb and started executive coaching. Dr. Patel and James joined the board and immediately began pushing Sophia in uncomfortable but necessary directions. The pivot was brutal. Sophia had to lay off 32 people, everyone working on automotive applications. She had to formally terminate partnerships she'd thought would define her career. She had to admit to her team, to the press, to everyone watching that Neural Vision was changing direction fundamentally. But she did it. With coaching, with board guidance, with Derek's support, she executed the pivot. 5 months later, Neural Vision signed their first major warehouse automation client, Amazon, piloting the system in 3 distribution centers. Then Target. Then Walmart. The technology that had failed in unpredictable outdoor environments excelled in controlled warehouse settings. Revenue accelerated. The company culture stabilized. The team, now leaner and more focused, started believing in the mission again. Sophia and I had coffee every week. Sometimes we talked about business, she asked questions, I shared perspective from managing dozens of portfolio companies. But mostly we talked about life. About the pressure we'd both felt growing up. About how our parents' expectations had warped us differently. About who we wanted to become. Our parents took months to understand what had happened. Dad was furious that I'd forced Sophia to downsize. Mom kept insisting I should have just given her the money without conditions. I let them be angry. Their opinions didn't define me anymore. But slowly something shifted. Dad asked me about a business problem. First time ever seeking my professional opinion. Mom mentioned to her friends that both my daughters are successful in technology, just different paths. Small steps. But steps forward. 11 months after that boardroom confrontation, Neural Vision raised their Series C at a $340 million valuation. Apex Frontier participated, of course. My return on that original $32 million investment? On paper, $173 million. If Sophia executed her next phase, it could hit $800 million. But the real return wasn't financial. Last month, Sophia keynoted the AI Summit, the same conference where 3 years ago Mom had bragged about her TED Talk. This time, 8,000 people filled the auditorium. Her topic: the pivot that saved my company. Why admitting failure is the first step to success. She told the whole story. The struggling metrics, the desperate fundraise, the boardroom where her secret venture capitalist sister controlled the decision. The devastating feedback, the painful pivot, the growth that came from acknowledging reality. The best thing that ever happened to my company, she said from that massive stage, was someone loving me enough to tell me the truth. Even when that truth destroyed the story I'd built my identity around. Even when it meant confronting every assumption I'd made about success. She paused, looking directly at where I sat in the front row. Elena, my sister, my investor, my toughest board member, thank you. For seeing what my company could become. For believing I could grow into the leader it needed. And for never giving up on me as a sister, even when I'd given you every reason to. 8,000 people stood and applauded. I sat in my office that night watching the recording of her keynote and thought about Abuela Rosa. About how she'd always said real success meant lifting others up, not climbing over them. About how she'd believed in both of us, differently but equally. I hope I made you proud, Abuela, I whispered. My phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. Sunday dinner at my place? I'm cooking. And I want to hear about your week for once. Really hear it. I smiled and texted back. Deal. But I'm bringing wine. If you've ever had to walk away from people who couldn't see your value or set boundaries that felt impossible, or build success despite everyone counting you out, tell me your story in the comments. What would you have done? Does any of this feel familiar? Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or opportunity or connections. It's honesty. Especially when that honesty shatters the comfortable fiction they've been living in. And sometimes being family means caring enough to let someone fail so they can learn how to succeed for real.